I'd like to call the special call meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order Thursday, March 19th, 2020. I'd like to announce at the beginning of the meeting that all guests remain seated and wait to be escorted out by our Rocky Mountain Police Department. We'll repeat that again before we adjourn. On March the 13th, 2020, Mayor Sandy Robinson declared a state of emergency in Rocky Mount as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. It has been almost 1 week since that declaration. This council has had a history of working together with the mayor and the staff to advance the safety, the health, and the well-being of all our residents in our city. We are no stranger to disaster. In 1999, when Hurricane Floyd devastated our city and much of eastern North Carolina, the city of Rocky Mount responded in such a coordinated and supportive manner that our city was recognized in our state and around the country as a model for preparedness and recovery efforts. Our city manager led the efforts to appoint working staff task forces and coordinate with other local, state, and federal resources to bring help and relief to our city and our city residents. Today, over 20 years later, we find ourselves in the midst of an international health crisis. I'll call this special meeting as a follow-up to the press conference led by the mayor so that the city manager can provide the mayor, the city council, our staff, and our citizens an update on the action that she is taking in response to many challenges in several sectors. We have asked the city manager to address several topics that impact our citizens, including how the city will work with our utility customers to ensure that our household continue to have running water, electricity, and all the essentials that the city provides to keep us safe and healthy. Number two, what the city is doing to ensure the health and the safety of our city workforce. And three, how the city is collaborating with the public healthcare sector in their response to this pandemic. And four, how the city finances are impacted by the wild swings in the stock market. And number five, and I pray that it doesn't come to this, that if we need to, that she would activate our Emergency Operations Center. At this time, I would like to call upon our city manager to update us on these topics and any other that she deemed necessary, and to inform us about what we can expect going forward. At this time, I call on Rochelle Small-Tony, our city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. My report today on COVID-19 is to first update you on significant actions that have been taken in response to state directives from the governor and guidelines from the federal CDC, or Center for Disease Control. Secondly, to review with you the overall plan for departmental operations at this time. Third, to present to you my recommendation for handling disconnections for utility services during this period. Fourth, what I'm hearing from local leaders in the healthcare field, the schools, and other governments as to how they are, or we are, preparing and how we can work collaboratively. There has been a tremendous amount of work put into keeping our employee portal, website, social media sites, and media outlets up to date on all relevant information concerning COVID-19 and our preparations for dealing with the virus. Due to the growing concerns and spread of COVID-19 throughout the state, city boards, commissions, committees, and neighborhood meetings have been canceled. City Hall is not closed. However, we are limiting the areas of where the public may enter to do its business to the first floor. For example, plans review meetings or bid openings will be held in the training room behind the HR department or in the area in the atrium on the first floor. City travel has been restricted only within designated service areas in the counties of Edgecombe and Nash. You are aware that effective Wednesday, March 18th, the Utility Services Center was closed to the public, and customers have been directed to pay their bills online through the 3 drive-through bays or mail. The customer services reps that staff the counters have been reassigned to service calls. Thus far, these changes have not presented problems to our customers or to the staff. The Parks and Recreation Centers and the Imperial Center have ceased all activities due to the mandated 50 or less participants. All youth and adult leagues are postponed. All tournaments scheduled for the sports complex have been canceled. Rentals for parks and facilities are not being accepted at this time, and rentals that currently are scheduled will continue if the attendance is 50 or less. Our utilities, water, wastewater, sewer, electric, and gas all are operating normally, and we certainly appreciate the fact that our water is of high quality and our electric and gas operations are running at its best, especially during a time when water is so very important to our safety and health. Parks remain open to the public at this time. The transit system is running without changes in routes or service levels. We think it's important that our citizens that depend on our transit to meet their daily needs, such as attending doctor appointments, pharmacy visits, and shopping, that this service is available to them. We are taking care to make sure that the buses are cleaned and sanitized throughout the period of time that they're on the road. In the police department, we are elevating the screening of calls for service through E91 Center to identify potential health risks to first responders. The SROs who are assigned to the schools have been reassigned now that schools have closed to dispatch. Coffee with a Cop has been postponed. Animals for adoption can be viewed online and are processed on a case-by-case basis. The fire department serves as the city's management team for emergencies and is the liaison between Nash County and the State Emergency Management Office. Additionally, they are the city's first responder to emergencies. In this capacity, they are also triaging the calls for assistance through the E911 to determine if the call is a COVID-19 related call or not. If the call is COVID related, EMS is called for transport to the hospital. For small businesses and homeowner relief support efforts, the city is not offering at this time COVID-19 specific resources. However, our Department of Community and Business Development will continue to monitor the SBA's response to Governor Cooper's request to the U.S. Small Business Administration to aid business owners. Mortgage relief is available for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac borrowers unable to make their mortgage payments, and those homeowners should contact their lender for more information. The city's urgent and housing repair programs are in progress and will continue uninterrupted. The Rocky Mount Event Center has canceled and rescheduled events that were scheduled for March. Staff is working diligently with event holders to reschedule those events. Throughout the city, we have enhanced cleaning of our buildings and facilities, either directly by contracted services and/or city employees. Now to speak specifically to the concerns for our employees. First and foremost, we encourage employees to follow the guidelines published by the CDC for their safety and their health. We also encourage them to stay at home if they are sick and if they believe that they have been in contact with anyone that has or is suspect to have this virus, and to seek medical attention immediately. This will prevent the spread of the virus to other employees and environments. We are practicing the social distancing rule of 6 wherever we can in offices and other settings, while keeping our buildings open to the public, with the exception, of course, of the Utility Services Center. For those employees who are unable to come to work as a result of the pandemic, the appropriate leave will be charged. However, I will authorize the employee to go into a negative balance for 2 weeks after they have exhausted their accrued leave balances so that they will not lose their pay during this time. The executive leadership team and I recognize that our employees are certainly concerned for their health and safety, just as we are concerned for them. We are making every effort to procure the protective equipment that they need to serve our citizens. In this declining economy, it is my goal to keep every city employee working, be it full-time or part-time, as long as our budget supports it. For those employees who are assigned to the program areas and activities that have been canceled, we will reassign them to work in other areas of the city organization or in the community, assisting churches, neighborhoods, and our partners so that they are not idle and can contribute to the recovery of our city, and as importantly, keep their paycheck. We will also provide free child care for city employees starting Monday, March 23rd at the Education Building at the Imperial Center. The hours of operation are 7:30 a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. for ages 5 through 12. They will need to bring their lunch, but snacks will be provided. The capacity of the program is 30 children, and this is on a first-come, first-served basis. And actually, this is the result of hearing about a situation where one of our employees was really challenged with the fact that their existing daycare provider, even though it was closed, was still charging that family for that child's space. And then the family, of course, would have to go out and seek another provider if they could find one at that cost. So it's a double cost to that employee. So we're very appreciative of the fact that Parks and Recreation stepped up and was able to provide this assistance free of charge again to our employees. We have spoken about the hardship the pandemic can cause to our employees. And I will now speak to the direction provided to me as suggested by Mayor Pro Tem Knight to consider the revision of the city's utilities disconnection policy. I have the proposed revision to the policy for council's consideration, and it's being shared with you now. The COVID-19 pandemic is anticipated to create a hardship for some of the city's utility customers as they experience reduction in employment or unexpected health care costs. To help during this unprecedented event, the city could offer temporary relief to the City of Rocky Mount utility customers by not disconnecting services for non-payment for a limited time for residential and small business customers. During the moratorium on disconnections, customers are still encouraged to pay if they can to avoid being faced with a large balance when the city resumes normal operations. This is a policy that you have in front of you on handling the period of no disconnections and subsequently the period of resuming normal operations. As you can see, Section A speaks to no disconnection collection during the COVID-19 pandemic. To assist the City of Rocky Mount residential and small business utility customers during this period by not disconnecting services for non-payment until further notice by City Council. There will not be any late fees assessed during this phase. Customers will continue to receive an automated courtesy call for past due balances. The message will be revised to clearly indicate it is a reminder of the balance due. Staff will monitor past due balances, and those with more than 2 months delinquency will be contacted to encourage them to pay something on the account. Staff will also provide any available assistance information to that customer. In Section B, to resume disconnection collection process at the conclusion of Section A. We will offer payment assistance plans to help customers with past due balances once the city resumes normal collection practices. The two plans are the COVID-19 Standard Payment Assistance Plan and the COVID-19 Hardship Payment Assistance Plan. The plans provide for the opportunity for the customer to catch up their past due balance over time without late fees. In the COVID-19 Standard Payment Assistance Plan program, there are eligibility criteria. Delinquency is effective beginning the date of the council approves to disconnect during the COVID-19 pandemic. Customer agrees to work with the customer service representative. The benefits of this plan is no paperwork or initial review, qualification, or setup. The customer's past due balance will be set up on a monthly installments up to 6 months in duration, depending on the balance. Threshold may be further defined once the severity of the outstanding balances are known. Protection from disconnection while adhering to the installment plan and paying the current month's utility bill. The late fee waived during the repayment period if the arrangement is kept. Under the COVID-19 Hardship Payment Assistance Plan program, the eligibility criteria are unable to satisfy delinquency in maximum of 8 months installment plan and 2 or 3 below. Number 2 would be documented income equal to or less than 150% federal poverty level guidelines. Number 3, the hardship is associated directly with the COVID-19 crisis, i.e. business company shutdown, unexpected child care expenses, unexpected medical expenses related to COVID-19, reduction in hours or business owner income, but not limited to these examples. The benefits of this plan is the protection from disconnection while adhering to installment plan and paying current month's utility bill. Seeking available assistance to ensure regular monthly payments are made and the late fee is waived during the repayment period if the arrangement is kept. Certainly the proof of hardships, customers to provide proof of income and documentation to support the stated hardship in order to complete the intake process. And you can see there how customers will be advised how to apply for this arrangement.
question.
Yes, sir.
At the bottom of the page of what you just spoke about, it said customers can contact the Business Services Center via phone
Yes, sir.
or email. It says we're in person, so we are taking appointments at the business center.
I think what would happen is someone would call in, and as they talk through this, it might be necessary for them to come in, and at that time, an appointment
But
would
that
be
would be case by case.
case by case. Yes, sir. So I am recommending the adoption of this policy following your review. Hopefully we can put this in place no later than Monday, the 23rd, at your next regular meeting. There are other ripple effects that COVID-19 is having on our local economy and the city's budget. As we approach the fourth quarter of this year, in preparation of next year's budget, we are forecasting a loss of around $350,000 below the budgeted amount.
City manager,
Yes, sir.
what will we do with our customers until we get this in place?
The normal process continues until the council changes the policy, which is why I'm recommending that you adopt this policy or amend the policy no later than Monday, March 23rd. Of course, you have a special meeting, regular meeting of council after the committee of the whole council and committee of the whole meeting, and if council is ready to adopt that policy today, certainly it's within your prerogative to do that.
Question.
Go ahead, Chris.
Do you have a breakdown department by department of what the expected difference is between revenue and expenses? I mean, you've come up with an overall loss figure, you're basing that on something.
Oh, yes, I was getting ready to get into that, but,
Okay,
okay?
be right away.
Okay, well, we'll jump right in, but does that answer your question?
Well, I'm concerned about what happened with the customers until we make this approval. People have utilities cut off, and I'm concerned about that.
Well, is this the time that are we gonna talk out, or discuss this after you finish your update, or you wanna talk about it now?
We can come back and discuss it as a council.
Okay.
And I ask what's your pleasure? And then if we agree, then in our next meeting, we can adopt it and approve it at that time.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have some questions. So,
Sure. Say those for the time.
okay.
She can continue her presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jordan.
To address Councilmember Miller's question about the budget, the stock market suddenly became a very volatile environment, as we all know. Indications are that the downward turn will continue like the level experienced in 2008, or even worse in 1929. Both of those market corrections rebounded over time. And similar to 2008, there are stimulus ideas being discussed to ease the financial markets, such as federal purchasing of corporate and municipal bonds and providing liquidity to banks and other distressed businesses. In 2008, the city did not lose any investment portfolio value, yet it experienced a decline of $750,000 of investment earnings. Investments of idle funds for North Carolina governments is regulated by NCGS 159-30. Allowable investment types include items that tend to guarantee the principal, such as obligations of the United States and North Carolina bonds. While the city will be impacted by lower investment earnings, the value of our investments should remain intact. The city invests through the North Carolina Capital Management Trust that has mutual funds approved by the local government commission. The city is invested in the NCCMT government and term funds. Both funds have an excellent track record. They are both focused on safety and liquidity over return. NCCMT government funds, which is a shorter term investment, and NCCMT term fund, which is a longer term investment, these portfolios seek to preserve capital by investing in obligations of the U.S. government, agencies of the U.S. government, and the state of North Carolina. It also invests in local government bonds and notes and high-grade money market instruments. 99.5% of the investments are fully collateralized. The investment risk is interest rate risk and issuer-specific decline in credit equity. The city's earnings on investments are expected to decline. For the current year, the earnings are anticipated to be $350,000 to $400,000 below what is budgeted in the current year. So that's what the revenue picture is. To address Councilmember Miller's concern is that when the revenues decline, then of course there's an adjustment that is made on the expense side. We haven't gotten to that point yet. I'm just advising the council at this time that we're expecting to have a gap on our revenues because of what is happening with our investments. We will be working to close this budget year balanced, of course, and prepare my recommended budget to mayor and council in the face of these new realities. Finally, what I'm hearing locally from our partners in healthcare, the schools, public safety, and businesses is that we are all taking this pandemic very seriously. We have no idea how long it will last. We have no idea how much we will be impacted by it in terms of illnesses, even for our workforce. We really have no idea. We just manage this hour by hour, day by day. I organized and invited local partners to City Hall just yesterday, and we listened and learned from each other. The collaboration was great, and in a crisis, this is when relationships and bonds mean a great deal. One of the things that I really learned from listening to the healthcare providers in particular is how much they lack in terms of protective equipment, the issue of testing anyone who visits the clinics, OIC clinic, the hospital, wherever it might be, how limited the healthcare industry is. And that's not just for Rocky Mount, that's really all over the country. So that makes this even more challenging. It was also comforting to me on Monday morning to come in and not be tasked with the question at that time that certainly was on everybody's mind, which is how we would feed the children who would not have food because of the closing of schools. And Dr. Ellis and Dr. Bridges both had stepped up, had developed a contingency plan for those children. And as far as I know, it's working, and it's working quite well. So as city manager for Rocky Mount, I was certainly pleased to know that our experiences thus far are not unique, and that all of us working together will lead our city up to and through recovery of this. But it does take collaboration. It does take sharing of information and supporting and filling in those gaps wherever they might be. I'd like to, this time, certainly acknowledge the executive leadership team, my team, directors and all of the staff throughout the city, because we certainly bond together to bring the city through this crisis, as has been done many times over historically. It's just that this is a little bit different, a lot different than what we have experienced in the past. But some of the lessons that have been learned within this community certainly can help guide us through this. And then finally, to say that the communications, marketing, and public relations consultant and her staff has certainly done a yeoman's job of answering the direction from the city council to set the council chamber up in such a way and to provide the transparency of these proceedings to those who may not feel comfortable coming into the council chamber. They've done a great job utilizing Microsoft Teams, and hopefully that technology is also working. So this will conclude my report and remarks.
At this time, will there be any questions from council members? If so,
I have a question.
Ms. Manager, you spoke a little bit about the shortfalling of revenue or anticipated revenue, and we're also trying to keep our employees at work, which I think is really what we need to be doing. But are there any estimates, maybe on the expense side, as to whether or not there are going to be overages, or is it consistent with what you've projected thus far?
Well, for what we know right now, it's just on the revenue side, and once we lock in on what that number potentially could be, that, of course, is when we start balancing the budget. And we'll look at things like vehicle purchases for this year, and we'll look at other, other line items. But I will sit down with each director of the budget, and we'll review their budgets individually, the budget manager and I, and we will get it in balance, no question about it.
As a follow-up to that, what do you think is a reasonable time frame for you to be able to make that assessment? And I'm sure you're doing it anyway right now, and I know it's sort of hard to nail down what our issues are until you start getting into the experience. But what are your best guess?
I think we can narrow it down probably within about 2 or 3 weeks max. I mean, the challenge is really selling, how much do you really think the revenues are going to be? And we tend to be very conservative in our estimation, both on the revenue side, and then we match that to the expenses.
Question.
proceed.
I had a call this morning from a citizen in my ward who was concerned. He had actually gotten a call from another resident who was concerned that the operations at the stockyard, and that's another plea of our community, were planned to go ahead this weekend. I'm not sure if that's Friday, Saturday, what day they're doing. But, so that leads me to ask whether our police department is checking on businesses and organizations that hold events that would have more than the number that are allowed under our state of emergency declared locally.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. The chief is certainly concerned about that. I think he will tell you that's one of his biggest challenges, is to make sure that these establishments are adhering to the executive order. So the police department will be enforcing the 50 or less rule.
50 or less?
50 or less.
Well,
The executive order,
when you have two of the 50 together, it's not trustworthy now. That just makes no sense to me. I realize that's what's being done across the nation, but thank you.
yes, ma'am.
So it's a clarification on 50 or less or 10 or less? How do we?
What we know so far is we're going by the state governor's executive order of 50 or less. I know that 10 or less is out there, but
Yeah,
that's
that
what we're going
was, the social interaction, that was, you talking about the president's.
That was the CDC advisory.
But we have to deal with enforcement of law, correct?
That's
So that would flow from the governor, is that correct?
Well, he issued a state executive order, and so that's why we're putting that as the top priority.
But with that said, we'd hope people have good sense to not congregate any more than 10 folks, only when necessary.
And at the right distance.
And at the right place.
I think it's gonna be sort of, people gonna get the perception that they're more and have gatherings as opposed to following what the CDC asked us to do about 10 or less. So, if I understand as far as enforcement, then we go with 50 or less.
That's what we're going to go with. I was just recently on a call with the Metro Mayor's organization and raised the question about if that applied to funerals. And we haven't gotten a response back yet. So I think you can expect some discretion, if you will, especially in sensitive times like that, to help the family and the funeral directors in how to bring that into balance. So you have to give some consideration for the event itself. So I just want to bring that up because that is something that has not been answered, and we haven't received any direction yet from the governor's office about that. But I know the people, administrators, are very concerned about.
There has been a clarification made on that today, and I'm sure it is. And it really was the intent of the executive order was to comply with religious gatherings such as church services as well as funerals, any public gathering.
Chief, you have that? I hate to bust up a funeral, but sounds like that's.
Put them in different rooms.
Trying to limit the number of funerals.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
Councilman Jordan, you good?
Going to the utilities and so about the disconnection, because that would include all utilities, correct?
Yes, all of the utilities.
But going towards the electrical, you know, we have to make a payment on a monthly basis to the North Carolina Municipal Power Agency. What do we pay them on a monthly basis in general? And if we do this, what kind of impact is it gonna have on our ability to make that payment? And then, also, I was on the call with the UNC School of Government today at 11, that conference call, I'm sure many folks were on there. I picked up on something I'm not aware of, but, I guess with the emergencies, something about something B, category B, when you have a national emergency, and I think there's a question whether this is gonna fall under that. But if we go ahead and if we make a decision not to charge any sort of fee, penalty or anything, is that gonna impact us with that emergency piece? And I don't know how it works, because it's my understanding that we can get reimbursed from the federal government. And you know more about this than I do, but I picked up enough to know that there are some reimbursables that we can receive, and if we do, we make a change, would that impact our future reimbursement? Or or can we do something differently to where we don't harm that, but still help the citizens out? In addition to because I don't think our payment that we have to make on a month to the, for our municipal power agency, they're gonna forgive that, I don't think. So, how much is our payment on it?
I don't know the exact amount. Chris is in the audience, but, so the whole point, of course, of declaring the state of emergency puts the city in a much better, in a better position to receive reimbursables for expenses during that period of time. I think what we were looking at is the hardship that our citizens will have to endure We already know that restaurants are closing or have closed. We already know that people are starting to feel the economic burden, if you will, of what has occurred so early in this pandemic crisis, and not knowing what's ahead. This is an opportunity to provide relief to our citizens. The city this isn't the first time that this has happened. And the recovery for that, of course, is to try to encourage customers to continue to pay and to pay something. But the logistics of what is going to come down in terms of what FEMA or whoever it is might reimburse the city, we're not aware of. We haven't worked through it at that point. But that is why we're encouraging people to continue to pay on their bill, not wait until it gets so large that it becomes not manageable. But it's a good question, because there is a balance between revenue and expenditures. And of course, you all count on those revenues to come in to balance the expense. I would also say that the utilities, as you might recall, are very healthy. And so these utilities can withstand the loss, if it comes a loss, of revenue to help get through this period of time. But I'll ask Chris, do you know, Chris, what the cost of the commodity is?
You know, we're going to limit what's going to keep everybody from coming in and say they can't pay their bill?
Well, I think you'll see some criteria there for.
Can I just say, just historically too, when we've had times where we do not disconnect during inclement weather in the winter time and other times. And what I found is that the citizens of Rocky Mount really want to pay their bills. There are more people who are more concerned about their inability to pay than those who are trying not to pay, if that makes sense. And so one of the things I do think that it's fair to do as a council is to ask everyone who is able to continue, your efforts to pay. We need money to stay in business, and we need revenue to keep our operations open. But what we also are asking us to be good neighbors and help people who are unable. They have job losses, layoffs, have to use their PTO instead of, or their paid time off instead of regular paychecks. We don't know what kind of situations that we'll be in or how long we'll be in this. So it's going to be very important for those households who do have stable revenue coming in to pay their bills, because we're depending on that to offset what I believe whatever losses might be. But if folk in Rocky Mount do what they always have done, I've been here 20 years, and we have been a very generous city. I have to say that under Amy's leadership and her staff, Latasha Hall, they work very hard to make arrangements for folks, and people really do try to pay their bills. And we have never had a situation where we've had more people not pay than pay. And what I'm praying, is that if we are able to adopt a more relaxed policy towards collections and disconnections, that our citizenry will work with us and keep us in business and keep paying. Because if we do have a hardship, Councilman Daughtry, it's no reason for us to not come back and have to revisit and make some changes. So that would just be my perspective.
And I agree with what you said. It's just from what I'm reading, Section A, we don't have really any criteria involved. Just no disconnection, no late fees.
Well, we might need to know what the criteria, we might need to hear what our people are dealing with before we make it too strict.
Well, I'm not saying we don't need to help. What I'm saying is we've got to protect this asset we have, which is the city of Rocky Mount. And by putting some criteria in, I think is the prudent and the fiduciary thing to do. I agree that most people want to pay their bills. There's no doubt about that. But we can't. I don't know if we can certainly depend on that. We've got to pay our bill to pay for the power in there. So I'm a little. Well, it's the business side of me coming out.
Well, I just want to say this, sir. We all are in business up here, and we've never had an issue. Now, we have had less of a collection rate than perhaps other cities, but we've always had strong balances. And what I would recommend before we start handcuffing our finance department's ability to negotiate with each individual customer, that we give this a chance and see what happens. And if we have to come back, if we find that collections, instead of being 93%, are 60%, if we have to come back and alter, there's nothing that says that we can't come back and revisit. But what we don't want to do is handcuff folk out the gate and not make it, give the flexibility to the people who are negotiating those rates. And we've never not paid our bill. Never. I've been here 20 years, and I've seen just about everything there is to see. I haven't seen a pandemic, but we had a major disaster in 1999. And I can't think of, and our rates were a whole lot higher, and we were in much more trouble in 99 than we are today. And our manager has said we have significant balances, that we do have some flexibility.
I just want to make a comment that is very hard to believe that we're sitting here in very, very deep discussions about utility bills when we know that a lot of our workforce in this area are not white-collar jobs. And they are ordinary, working, hard people that are in restaurants, living off tips, and minimum wages, not affordable wages, and child care, and dealing with everything else. And if God knows if someone is sick in their family, dealing with how to keep my lights on, my water on, and buy food and medication. And so I just think we would have some kind of humane spirit among us, that we remain strong and encourage our citizens to do what's right, but yet still have a spirit of humility and God-fearing, that He would bring us through. I read an article back in 1918 where we did have a pandemic here in Rocky Mount, and how people pulled together to bring this city back. And history repeats itself. It's been over 100 years ago, and here we are now facing one that we've never seen before. No one's here to ever, they can tell us about it because there's no one here. But Councilman Daughtridge, I hope that you will find in your heart to have some kind of understanding when it comes to working families that are trying to do what's right, and through hardship be able to hold their head up and keep their families together with dignity. I understand what you're saying.
Well, I'm not so
wait. I'm speaking, okay? And we're gonna respect each other in this meeting. And I will call upon you when I finish.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But not to belabor the point, I'd like to thank Amy and her staff for pulling this together and being thoughtful about what is about to take place. And however this council feels, we voted up or down, and we move forward. Okay? Now, you may speak.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think my comments are being misconstrued by trying to put in some prudent criteria in here, because right now there's no criteria in here. Okay, Councilman Blackwell just stated that maybe we can put something, if we get to a certain percentage, we can come back and look at this. Nowhere in here is there a percentage that we might look at that. And we need to do what's right for the city, because the city, we may never have not paid our bill. I don't doubt that. But what I am concerned about is we've got to be in a healthy economy where we can keep this city moving. Because I think we're going to see revenues decline like we've never seen before. Sales tax revenue is going to go down, revenue, all sorts, besides the fact that we've got investment interest rates going to go down. at least we can keep our principal. We've got to keep this whole city going. In addition, the humane thing is keeping our employees employed, because we don't have enough revenue in here, we cannot keep our employees employed. So, I think I am asking some prudent questions, and to say that I'm not inhumane is not fair, and is not right, and I come from a blue-collar family, and I know what it means to not have something.
Point taken.
Thank you.
Are there other council members have any comments on this particular subject?
I would just advise staff, city manager staff, that let's not delay this assistance for our city and people who work hard, and whatever is necessary to move this forward. I would say let's do it without delay.
And I have one more thing I really want to
Sure,
say
Councilman Blackwood.
to round it out. This city has charged people plenty of money historically, beyond what was reasonable for utilities. And when this council stepped up and challenged the rates that were being charged, the formulas that were being developed, and when concerns were more about the city budget than about household budgets, I think we have to think about historical engagement in Rocky Mount and perhaps look at what we're doing as ensuring the health of all of our city. Look at the percentage of people who live in this city who are over 65, who live on a fixed income, who don't have any other resource than that one check that comes in. In addition to Rocky Mount being the #1 or #2 highest city for unemployment in the state of North Carolina persistently for 30, 40 years, not just this year or last year. And then still seeing that we have a robust city economy. And what I say, I hear you, I understand you, Lige, Councilman Daughtridge, about your concern that we keep our financials solvent so we can continue to be in business. But what I also ask is that we be careful not to bankrupt households while we keep this city budget strong. It doesn't do well for people that we represent to say we care more about the city's budget than we care about your household. And by the same token, we're asking full engagement from all of Rocky Mount, that all of us do the very best we can do. If you got a check coming in, or you have investments, you don't have to worry about it, please don't skip your bill. We need your money. But if you're challenged to make ends meet, to buy food and toilet paper and hand sanitizer or soap, and you have to choose between that, surviving, and paying your bill, we're saying we're working with you. All we want to do is give our finance team the ability to work with each individual according to what comes into their household. And I think if we can just work together, recognizing that we've never missed a payment. I've never seen us miss a payment. Our credit is exceptional. And if the whole country is in a lurch, then Rocky Mount is not going to do worse than everybody else. We don't have a history of that. And so I would caution us to not presume that people would not want to work with us, than to assume that we will miss the mark.
Well, I would just maybe echo some of the comments that have been made. Certainly, the city staff and I are very diligent about the solvency of all these funds. And to the credit of utility billing staff, they really do an awesome job of working with people. By and large, to back up what Councilman Blackwell has just said, people genuinely want to pay their bills. And they work with the staff with these payment plans to make sure that they get caught up. Of course, you have one or two, who don't. And that's just in every business. You're gonna run into people like that. But by and far, this staff works extremely hard with families to pay the bill. Now, as city manager, when I think about when people are in crisis and their lights and their water is cut off, what do you think that does to the crisis? It doesn't make the crisis go away. It really just pushes on, that family even more. And if we, the city, is in a financial condition as we are to help bridge these families until we come out of this crisis, then we should do that. That's why I'm recommending this policy change, so that we can do that. Because people sitting in the dark and they're not being able to get clean, decent water does not help the crisis at all. I'm going to see it again. I'm going to see it on the streets with more police enforcement and all kinds of things that will result from this. If the funds could not withstand that, then I would stand here and tell you that we can't do it. But we have the ability to do it. And I think that we carefully monitor this, have no problem coming back to the council, reporting, if you will, on a monthly basis, how well it's going. But I do think that allowing people to be disconnected because they don't have the ability to pay, when we know that we're in an economy now, a local economy, that's spiraling down. And gosh knows, we don't know how far down it's gonna go. So what we need to do is anticipate that and help people so that they don't fall to the rock bottom. And this is a basic living requirement, is decent water. No decent water, it's not gonna be about just Corona, it's gonna be about a lot of other things too.
Well, we had enough discussion on this matter.
Well, I've got a question regarding my earlier question. Well, sure Mr. Besser can answer that question, but I was talking more about the FEMA reimbursement, and really what I was pointing to with my comments, in addition to not having any criteria, would it be more prudent, I'm asking the question, if we charge those fees and then later looked at during this crisis to possibly forego those fees, but depending on what FEMA would be reimbursing us, or would we be leaving money on the table if we went ahead and said no to the fees and went ahead and said, okay, we're not going to charge any fees or anything, and then FEMA comes back in and said this is part of a reimbursement, and I don't know what the fees that we would forego would be. And that's part of my question through this whole thing, is because FEMA, no one knows, and when we called today, they said, first of all, they don't know if this is a reimbursable. That's still a question in there. The second thing is they don't know what criteria is going to be placed on there. Are we going to be leaving money on the table if we go ahead and forgive those fees? We can forgive them, we can go backwards and forgive them just as well as we can forgive them going forward.
No, sir, I don't think you'd be leaving any money on the table. Because if we're going to charge the customer the late fee, you're not going to get reimbursed twice. In my experience with FEMA, it takes a very long time for those funds to even come back to the city. So it's a wash. Either you're going to get reimbursed by FEMA or the customer is going to pay the fee. It's not going to be both. So to me, I would forgive the fee because I think that helps to make this a bit more manageable for our customers. All the late fee is going to do is just accrue, right? So, my suggestion would be to not charge the late fee at all. You're not gonna get it back anytime soon, from my experience with FEMA reimbursement.
Well, I think, yes, that had an answer
Question
to
about the-
Councilman Doddridge. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor, members of council. My name is Chris Beschler, Director of Energy Resources. On an annual basis, the electric utility pays about $55 million. On a monthly basis, that varies based on heating and cooling, and we have the shoulder months, but it actually varies monthly, but on an annual basis, it's about $55 million. Gas, we have a set rate that we pay per kilowatt hour for electric. On gas, it's based on the commodities market primarily, and that varies somewhere in the $15 to $20 million range.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask one question about gas, since he's there?
Sure.
What are the natural gas rates as compared to what we're purchasing at the tank? And is there any correlation between the low rates of gas that we fill up our cars with versus what we are paying the city for usage in gas?
Yeah, there is, of course, the gas that you put in your car is liquid, and it's different than the natural gas, which is vapor. But there is a relationship, you're absolutely correct, there's a relationship. And I did want to say that right now, the price of natural gas commodity is actually at a decade's low. We haven't seen prices this low, probably going back to the early 2000s. So the commodities is very
So are we able to pass that savings on to our customers?
Right, yes.
Okay. City Manager?
No, sir, I will go back again to my recommendation to the council to adopt this policy. Certainly you can do it as soon as the next meeting is called, or no later than March the 23rd, which is the next meeting of the city council. That's my recommendation.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions at this time? Okay. If not, that completes your,
Yes, sir.
all right. We want to thank you for a job well done, very detailed, very thorough. I think that's information that probably most of the council members have been approached with various questions. It is very important as a board that we speak or talk from the same or sing from the same hymn book, so to speak, but have accurate information that we can share with our citizens. And information like this so informative that we can get the correct information that we can give to our constituents when we return from this meeting.
Yes,
I
sir.
think we also have an informational package
Yes, sir.
that was prepared by your staff, and we
Yes.
thank you, Ms. Brown, that we can share with our constituents in reference to this issue that we're having among us at this present time. So let's take this information packet and we can duplicate it, we can share it, and hopefully we can answer a lot of the questions that comes before us from our constituents. Okay. At this time, there are no other questions, no other comments on this meeting. I'm sure I deem that I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and I think we have another meeting. That's correct, Mayor?
That's correct.
Okay. So at this time, the special call meeting of the Committee of the Whole is now adjourned.
Do we have a customer roll right straight into the next meeting? Do we have an agenda printed? No? This one? Good. Okay, I'd like to bring the city council meeting for March 19th to order. I'd like everybody to stand while I'll say a prayer and we'll discuss the new business. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather before you. We ask that you will provide us with great wisdom as it relates to not only the issues of the day, but the issues confronting our city going forward to the many months that we have in front of us. We ask, Lord God, that you will provide us with great wisdom, that you will provide us with fellowship, with positive direction, and with unity as we move forward in these treacherous waters. We thank you, and we ask these things from you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Knight,
Here.
Blackwell,
Here.
Joyner,
Here.
Walker, Daughtridge,
Here.
Bullock,
Here.
and Miller. Ms. Miller.
Yeah.
They got you.
Okay, we really only have two items on the agenda unless there's some new business that we need to discuss. First though, before we get going, I'd like to acknowledge the work that Dorothy Brown Smith and her team did to pull together the technology to allow Councilmember Miller and Councilman Walker to participate in this meeting, and hopefully will allow us to do this going forward. It's a tremendous amount of work at the last minute to pull it all together, and I think we'd be remiss not to acknowledge that. In addition, I'd also like to thank our city manager, Rochelle Small-Tony, for her work and her efforts in putting together the report for today, and know that we have plenty more going forward and lots to watch, and I appreciate you getting ahead of it, city manager. But please would also like me to remind everybody here who is a visitor that if you would remain seated until after the meeting, they will escort you outside. So those are the announcements that I have on the go forward. I think what we have in terms of discussion or policies, and we've had a robust discussion today, was the utility policy that Councilman Knight had brought up in our press conference. We've obviously had a recommendation. We've had some discussion, but I'll open the floor for some additional discussion if we feel like we need to do that.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the changes going forward while we're in this challenging moment.
Okay, I have a motion to approve it, have a motion that we approve the policy by Councilman Joyner, seconded by Councilman Knight. All those in favor say aye. I'm sorry. Discussion. I'm sorry, any discussion, any additional discussion on the motion?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am, Councilman Miller.
We should just make sure that all of our customers are aware that just because we're not enforcing cutoff or we're not issuing fines or anything, that their bills are still due at the same time. And if they do not pay them, then those bills accumulate, they have no difficulty paying. I know people that have had difficulties with getting their bills paid, understand that, but maybe for those who have not been in this experience before, they may need to be reminded.
Okay, so noted. Is there any additional discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, and Councilman Daughtridge wanted to, and I'm not speaking for you, but we had sort of sidebar conversation that if you don't live within the city limits of Rocky Mount, but you're purchasing your utilities from Rocky Mount, then you're still eligible to take advantage of this benefit. So this is not just limited if you live within the city limits. If you are a City of Rocky Mount residential or small business utility customer, this will apply to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, it does.
Councilman Daughtridge.
There was discussion earlier, and I think Councilman Blackwell brought it up. Would it be prudent to maybe have a review period if we go into a certain percentage of collection less than, I don't know what that may be, but for the city council to review that, I really don't know. I mean, just,
Say 90%, I mean, aren't we normally about 93%, 94%?
Someone staff that can speak to that.
in a percent, because the customers move through being 1 month behind, 2 months, 3 months, and percentages can vary based on dollar amounts. So it's kind of hard to quantify, and I couldn't even give you that number right now, but I think we could come back with some sort of metric that you'd be able to look at. And I would suggest the aging as that metric. Let's see how many have aged past 2 months or 3 months, and when we start to see that growing, that we come back to make some decisions.
So we could do it both ways of doing it monetarily and then also the number of customers.
Yes,
Okay.
the number of accounts that are probably 60 or 90 days delinquent.
And that, of course, is dependent on the length of time for the COVID-19 crisis. So if the crisis ends before that time, then of course we're in a different kind of repayment mode for sure.
So can we define, I guess, when the president and the mayor were no longer under a state of emergency? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, I've got any additional discussion? I've got a motion and a second. I've had some discussion, one requiring maybe we add a metric, some sort of metric to the thing, and business owners not living in Rocky Mount also eligible for the program. Is that something we feel like we need to amend the motion to embrace, adopt, make it conditional, or do we think the motion as is sufficient?
Just for clarification, we're talking about customers of our utility.
Correct.
So whether they're inside or outside of Rocky Mount, it would apply to them, both residential and small business.
I'm just making sure everybody has clarity about
I think you're all right on the motion.
it. Okay. That being said, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. The second item really is the talking about technology and the use of that in the future as we may need to convene city council, but not necessarily be present here. If we could, I know you're not prepared necessarily, Mrs. Dorothy, but if you could tell us a little bit about the process technology that we have, any kind of legal issue that we need to be aware of as we go forward in trying to utilize this technology as a means to meet.
You want to get the technology first?
I think so. Well, I don't know. If
I'm not going to give you the technology.
I was saying, well, you might be the non-starter though. So.
Well, there is some question about electronic meetings, but it has been done for a number of years. It's been done by a lot of jurisdictions. There's no specific authority. There is a provision in the open meetings law that says if you set up and do it remote and do it electronically, then the public has to have a way to listen in. So it's recognized in the open meetings law, although it's not specifically recognized in the 168, which is the general statute chapter that applies to cities. So, I mean, we've done it in the past. I think if we were taking a very important action and we did not have a forum in the council chamber, that it may be a little bit risky. So I hope after this, the legislature will clarify that, but that's where we sit. We're using it today, with two members absent, but we do have a forum in the council chamber.
So, may I ask a
Sure, please do.
So, Mr. Rose, may we put a little pressure on the General Assembly or the League of Municipalities, and can we, ask for a formal, ruling on what is possible in cases of national disaster that we're living in now? Can we sort of push them a little bit? I'm sure they talk about it.
We ought to get it to where we wouldn't have to have a disaster, so we could use it, because then you got problems with defining the disaster, and do you have to come in and declare a state of emergency, so you can, yes, and I'm thinking that the league, as part of its legislative goals, is going to be looking at this, because it's been discussed for a long time, the question, do you have authority or don't you have authority?
But what I'm asking is, can we push them a little bit? Can you write a letter, call them, send an email or something saying Rocky Mountain wants to know, what can we do?
Yeah.
Okay,
Do what you do about it.
thank you, sir.
But in summation, what I'm hearing you say is that there is no specific law written. We have done it in the past. It is something that if it's an issue of very much significance, a quorum present would be preferable. But again, untried, no case law, no real understanding how that works. So there's some at-risk associated with that.
Yeah, if you had less than a quorum here, but you had a quorum counting those who were doing it electronically, I think they would be at risk.
But along the electronic piece, don't we also have to have a space available for the public to come?
Yeah, you do, and we've done that now fair, I think, where they can listen in electronically.
So you'd have to have both modes, you know, whether they can log into a conference call or come
Yeah,
here
if
directly.
it's done by a conference call, they have to be, the public should be able to listen in. If it's done electronically, and it's not clear, because when the open meeting law was adopted, we didn't have email and that sort of thing, but, you know, if you are communicating simultaneously with email, then I think that's an electronic meeting as well. We would have to have a way for at least the public to be able to see what's going on with the exchange between the council. Fortunately, we didn't have to do that. But you see how much better it works when you have verbal interaction.
Do we also have to vote, before we have to vote, I guess to change our rules, the meeting code, so to speak, before we can even do that?
Well, I think it would be helpful to get the rules, but the rule that we're going under is the open meeting law. And, you know, there's not a specific rule back in chapter 168. So I don't think there's a problem with today's meeting because you've got four here.
But with, I'm sorry.
So you're saying, so long we have a quorum, we're okay?
Yeah, I'm a lot more comfortable with
Okay.
forms here.
Until you bring us
You
something
can
back.
act, even
Right.
if you cut the cord on those two.
Well, and that was gonna be my question, so does the vote for, Councilman Miller and Walker count since you got a quorum here? I mean, that was some of the stuff I've been reading, that their vote really wouldn't
I
matter.
think we're gonna count their votes. Right. Let's get through the crisis first, and then we can go around too many points.
Right. Ms. Dorothy, Graham Smith.
The only thing I would ask you is what Jack is saying, and what we did is follow the open meetings law, because he and I had an opportunity to talk. So in addition to what we're doing here by using the Microsoft Teams to allow our council members to be able to participate, while we cannot see them, they can actually see us and see what's going on. And also, we have the camera set up over here where we're doing FaceTime Live, so any of our public can actually have an opportunity to participate. So they're seeing what's going on, but however, they cannot answer questions. So we did want to respect each part and each element of the public records law.
I'd like to make a comment.
Please do, Councilman Miller.
To the extent that we all meet so much as possible, the requirement that we not meet, we are shortening the time this whole thing will go on. Every time we encounter some person who might be infected, or that we might infect a healthy person, we are extending that time. So to the extent at all possible, we need to avoid public meetings. This is not like smallpox or something that you might see. This is an invisible virus. And people, as I understand it, can be contagious even before they know they have symptoms. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, discussions? I mean, it's my opinion and my feeling that we need to have some provision going forward, particularly because of self-quarantining and other issues that we're hearing on an ongoing basis. And it's not crazy to think that we might not be able to gather a quorum for a vote. And at the same time, I don't think the city can shut down in terms of our responsibility and obligation to manage the resources and provide direction. So I don't know really how to, untie the Gideon knot here, but, perhaps it is maybe finding some local government, maybe change the muni code, maybe try to test it in that way, that manner. I'm looking for suggestions and just in trying to get ahead of what might be a potential issue. I think it's always preferable if you're face to face. Conversation flows better, issues are more easily resolved, but sometimes that may not be an option for us going forward.
But if it's your only option, you have to use it.
Very well. All right. That being the case, I don't think we have anything to vote on here. Is there any other new business that we need to consider?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir. Councilman Walker.
this is a question for Madam Manager. Are there any departments that have restrictions, as far as the city is concerned, that have restrictions on being able to go to their houses or places for lunch?
I'm not quite sure, I understand the question. The employees are free to go wherever they can, but as I understand it, the restaurants are closed, and takeout or drive-through is available. So I'm not quite sure I understand, but there are no restrictions placed on employees.
Okay, I had a couple of constituents that wanted me to check into that, so I'm not sure if there has been something internal where a department head has kind of made a call or something that we weren't aware of, but I just wanted to make sure I asked you to kind of clarify.
I can certainly check into that, but I haven't heard that, and I know that I have not restricted the movement of employees, therefore it does not exist.
Okay, thank you so much.
So they can go home to the park, sit in the car, whatever, not be penalized.
Exactly, yeah, yes.
As long as we do it in the time frame.
Yes, within their lunch hour, yes, and their break. That's the only restriction.
Is there any other comments?
I do have a question. What are
Yes,
the,
sir.
I should know, is the breaks an hour for lunch or 30 minutes, or it depends?
It depends on the classification of the employee. Some have an hour break, and then some have a 30-minute lunch hour.
Thank you. I'll wait after the crisis and we'll talk about that.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Mr. Mayor, one more question. Sorry.
Yes, sir. Councilman Walker.
And this could be to my ignorance, but Madam Manager, do we already have a plan in place? I saw today where, I think it was Greystone shut down from, temporarily because of the case they had. Do we already have a plan in place if we were to experience a case that hit, city staff or, different business organizations in Rocky Mount? Do we already have plans in place for what we're doing moving forward?
So if someone were to test positive, I think obviously what would happen next is that that individual and their family and the people they've been in contact with would be quarantined. If you're talking about the community as a whole, I think that's what your question is. At that point, of course, it's turned over to the healthcare provider to manage that particular situation. If the person is employed, then of course it goes to that employer to have to deal with it. Now, if we had, I could anticipate that if we were to have a number of people to test positive in the community and we started to see a real increase, that's where that group that we've been talking about earlier of local leaders would then get together and decide how we would manage that as a community.
Okay, I just didn't know if it was in our power or in your power to sort of make that call. But it sounds like it's more of a health department issue than a city standpoint decision-making process.
Yeah, I would have to yield to the healthcare professionals to manage the health situation. However, I think there's enough in place now with the executive order from the governor and CDC guidelines to help guide employers of people who have been impacted in that sort of way. At least that's how we would handle it here. So if that individual was an employee of the city, then we would certainly wait until there was clearance for the employee to return to work. Most likely we would impose a requirement that their co-workers be tested to make sure that they're not infected as well. We would probably take some other measures in terms of the physical locality of those employees, and that's what I would expect other employers to do as well.
I understand that there are cities and other parts of the country that have already been more heavily impacted, that are having just percentages of their employees work at any given time, so that not all of them are exposed. I don't know how they handle that rotation, but we don't need everybody to get infected or to exposed, and then the whole operation has to be put on hold.
Right, and so we would wait until we get to that level of response and protection for the existing employees. At this particular time, in my opinion, it's not necessary to take those kinds of steps because we don't have that threat. But once we get to a point of being able to manage something like that, then we certainly would take those kinds of steps.
Any additional questions? I have a motion on the floor from Councilmember Joyner, seconded by Councilmember Knight, to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.